Hi, this is Jennifer, and this is my mini lesson on the progress of a case through the courts and making sure it's all in the filed in the right jurisdiction. My example stems from the death of Mrs. Elizabeth Jones. Mrs. Jones had lived her entire adult life in Humboldt, Tennessee, which is in Gibson County. She died on July 3rd, 2002, and she had named her husband as executor of her will. Mr. Jones had died 10 years prior to Mrs. Jones, but she had named her son as successor executor. After Miss Jones died, her son John found her will and knew that he needed to take it in and have it probated. So he went into the attorney's office and met with the attorney, and they made a determination by looking at the code that wills have to be proved or recorded where the testator had his usual residence at the time of his death. So as we said, Mrs. Jones had lived her whole life in Gibson County, so that's where the case would be filed. So in Gibson County, we would determine where the case would be filed, and we would know, or we would figure out that the case would be filed in Chancery Court, and Judge Ellis is the Chancellor of the Chancery Court, and Gibson County is the 28th Judicial District, and we look at the Chancery Court rules for there, and if you look here, there is a section of how to file filing of estates in the Chancery Court. So that's exactly what they did. They went in and they followed all the proper steps in Gibson County on what they were supposed to do to probate a will. Including in that is to give notice to known creditors. And Mr. Jones knew that his mother had an Exxon Mobil card and didn't know if she owed any money on it, so he mailed out a notice. He ran it in the paper and mailed it to Exxon. Didn't hear from him until September 22nd, 2004. Exxon came in and filed a claim against Mrs. Jones' estate. Mr. Jones' attorney filed an exception or an objection to that claim, and he filed it in staying in the probate court, the Chancery Court, because Chancery Court is trial court, is the lower level trial court. So in that court, the chancellor ruled that that the claim was filed late, and he did not allow Exxon's claim. Well, Exxon did not like that answer, so they decided they wanted to appeal the judge's ruling. So the Tennessee court system has the trial courts, in which you can see the trial courts of general jurisdiction, or the Chancery Court, and in this case the probate falls under the Chancery Court, but the next court is the Intermediate Appellate Court. In Tennessee, we have a Court of Appeals and a Court of Criminal Appeals. Well, this isn't a criminal case, so Exxon filed their appeal in the Court of Appeals in Tennessee, and in their instance, they're in the Western District, so they filed. There's a court that sits at Jackson, Tennessee. So they would look at the website if they didn't know and figure out how to file their case in the Court of Appeals. So once the case was filed in the Court of Appeals, no new evidence can be presented, but the Court of Appeals hears what the parties have to say and looks at what happened, and the Court of Appeals determined that the lower court was right, that Exxon was late in filing their claim. Well, Exxon didn't like that either. So they decided to file their appeal in their court of last resort. In this instance, is the Tennessee Supreme Court, because this is a state law. This is under the code law. It's not a federal law that's been violated. So Exxon filed their claim with the Tennessee Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court took up the matter and looked at all the facts, looked at everything that had filed with the court, the pleadings, the rules, and what the law said, and the briefs of the parties, and the Supreme Court affirmed the opinions of the lower court. So that was the end. Exxon couldn't do anymore. Thanks for listening.